Child accidentally reveals family struggle. Studio Sealy, child accidentally reveals family's hidden struggle.
Studio Ceiling!
Sometimes the most powerful truths slip out when we least expect them. Sometimes a child's innocent comment can pull back the curtain on struggles that families have been hiding for months or even years, revealing pain that pride kept buried and needs that shame kept silent. These moments remind us that behind every smile, behind every "we're fine," there might be a family barely holding on, waiting for someone to notice, hoping for someone to care. If you believe in the power of community, in helping our neighbors when they're struggling, and in never judging someone until you know their whole story, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that show us the best of humanity when we choose compassion over judgment. It was a Wednesday afternoon at Madison Elementary School, and the 5th grade class was buzzing with excitement because they had a very special visitor. A local news station was filming a segment called Future Leaders of Tomorrow, where they interviewed students about their dreams, goals, and what they wanted to be when they grew up. The segment was meant to be uplifting and inspirational, showcasing the bright young minds in the community and giving kids a chance to be on television. The reporter, Angela Martinez, had been doing these segments for 3 years, and she loved how genuine and hopeful children were when talking about their futures. She had interviewed aspiring astronauts, future doctors, young entrepreneurs, and kids with dreams as big as the sky. But nothing could have prepared her for what 10-year-old Lily Patterson was about to accidentally reveal in front of the cameras, her classmates, and eventually the entire community. Lily sat in the front row of students who had volunteered to be interviewed, wearing her neatest clothes, which happened to be a slightly faded pink sweater with a small stain near the hem that her mother had tried to scrub out the night before, and jeans that were a bit too short because she'd grown 2 inches since last year and there hadn't been money for new ones. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail secured with a rubber band because they'd run out of proper hair ties weeks ago, and she wore a bright smile that lit up her whole face. Lily was known in her class as the helpful one, always volunteering to clean up, always offering to share her supplies, always checking on classmates who seemed sad or left out. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, had specifically recommended Lily for the interview because she was articulate, kind, and had a maturity that seemed beyond her 10 years. Angela Martinez positioned herself in front of the camera, her professional smile in place as she prepared to interview the group of 5th graders. The segment was going wonderfully so far, with kids enthusiastically sharing their dreams of becoming veterinarians, professional athletes, and video game designers. The energy in the room was positive, and the footage was exactly what the news station wanted, heartwarming content that would make viewers smile during the evening broadcast. Then Angela turned to Lily, whose hand had been raised eagerly, waiting for her turn to share. "Hello there," Angela said warmly. "What's your name?" "Lily Patterson, Mom," the girl replied politely, sitting up straighter. "And what do you want to be when you grow up, Lily?" Lily's face became serious, thoughtful, like she was considering the question with the weight it deserved. "I want to be a social worker," she said clearly. Angela's eyebrows raised slightly, pleasantly surprised by such a specific career choice from a 10-year-old. "That's wonderful, Lily. Can you tell us why you want to be a social worker?" Lily nodded, her expression earnest. "Because social workers help families who are going through hard times. They help people who don't have enough money for food or who might lose their house. They help kids who are scared or sad. And I think that's really important work because lots of families need help, but they're too embarrassed to ask for it." Angela smiled, impressed by the thoughtfulness of the answer, but something in Lily's tone caught her attention. It wasn't the abstract idealism that usually came from children talking about helping professions. There was something more personal, more urgent in the way Lily spoke. "That's very mature of you, Lily," Angela said. "What made you interested in this kind of work? Do you know someone who's a social worker?" Lily shook her head. "No, Mom. I just know what it's like when families are struggling and nobody knows about it." Angela leaned in slightly, her reporter instincts suddenly alert. "What do you mean, honey? Can you tell me more about that?" This was the moment when everything changed. Lily, in her innocent desire to answer the question thoroughly and honestly, didn't realize what she was about to reveal. She didn't understand that some things were meant to stay private, that her mother had been working so hard to keep their struggles hidden, that admitting the truth in front of cameras and classmates and teachers would pull back a curtain they'd been desperately trying to keep closed. Lily just wanted to explain why social workers were important, so she told the truth. Well, she began, her voice steady and matter of fact, "My family has been struggling a lot since my dad lost his job 8 months ago. He worked at the factory, but they closed it down and a lot of people lost their jobs. Dad tries to find new work, but there aren't many jobs in our town. So money has been really hard." The classroom had gone completely silent. Chen's expression shifted from pride to concern. The camera operator, who had been casually filming what he thought was just another cute kid interview, suddenly focused more intently. Angela Martinez, experienced enough to know when a story was taking an unexpected turn, kept her expression neutral and gentle. "That must be difficult for your family, Lily." Lily nodded, not noticing the change in atmosphere, not seeing the way her classmates were suddenly paying much closer attention. "Yeah, it's been hard. Mom works at the grocery store, but she only gets part-time hours, so we don't have health insurance anymore. Dad does odd jobs when he can find them, like mowing lawns or fixing things for people, but it's not regular money." Lily paused, then continued with the same straightforward honesty. "We had to move out of our house 6 months ago because we couldn't pay the rent anymore. Now we live in our car most nights, or sometimes if it's really cold, we stay at the church shelter. But the shelter is only open 3 nights a week, so the other nights we park behind the grocery store where Mom works because she knows the manager and he said it's okay." The entire room seemed to stop breathing. Angela Martinez felt her heart breaking even as her professional mind was processing the enormity of what this child had just revealed. Chen had her hand over her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. The other students stared at Lily in shock, some of them whispering to each other. And Lily, sweet innocent Lily, continued talking, still not understanding what she'd done. "We keep our stuff in storage bins in the trunk, and Mom and Dad let me sleep in the back seat with the blankets and my stuffed animals so I'm comfortable. Mom and Dad sleep in the front seats. We go to the YMCA to take showers before school, and Mom makes sure my clothes are always clean so nobody knows we're homeless. Dad says it's really important that I keep going to school and doing my homework because education is how I'll have a better life than they did." Lily smiled then, a genuine smile full of love for her parents. "They're really good parents. They make sure I always eat, even if they have to skip meals. And they never let me see them cry, but sometimes I hear them at night when they think I'm asleep." Angela Martinez, a seasoned reporter who had covered everything from city council meetings to natural disasters, found herself struggling to maintain professional composure. "Lily," she said gently, "does anyone at school know about your situation? Have you told your teacher or the counselor?" Lily shook her head. "No, ma'am. Mom and Dad made me promise not to tell anyone because they're afraid that if people find out, someone might call child services and they might take me away. My parents love me so much and they're doing their best. They just need help, but they don't know how to ask for it without getting in trouble. And that's why I want to be a social worker when I grow up, because I want to help families like mine so kids don't have to worry about where they're going to sleep or if there's going to be enough food." The silence in that classroom was deafening. It was the kind of silence that comes when people are confronted with a truth so uncomfortable, so heartbreaking that they don't know how to respond. These students had sat next to Lily every day for months, shared lunch with her, played with her at recess, worked on group projects with her, and none of them had known. Mrs. Chen had taught Lily, watched her complete every homework assignment on time, noticed how helpful and kind she was, and hadn't suspected that this child was homeless. The camera had captured every word, every detail of this accidental revelation. And Angela Martinez knew that this footage would never air as planned. This wasn't a feel-good segment about children's dreams anymore. This was a crisis unfolding in real time. Angela looked at the camera operator and made a cutting motion across her throat, the universal signal to stop filming. She immediately knelt down in front of Lily, who was starting to look confused by the reactions around her. "Lily, honey, you did nothing wrong by telling me this. In fact, you were very brave. But I need you to know that we're going to help your family, okay? You and your mom and dad are not going to have to sleep in your car anymore." Lily's eyes widened with fear. "Are you going to call child services? Are they going to take me away from my parents?" "No," Angela said firmly. "We're going to help your family stay together. But first, I need to talk to Mrs. Chen and the principal. Can you stay here with your classmates for a few minutes?" Within 15 minutes, the principal's office was filled with people trying to figure out how to help the Patterson family. Angela Martinez had called her news station, but not to air the footage, to mobilize resources. She called the station manager, who immediately began contacting local charities, churches, and community organizations. Mrs. Chen called the school counselor and the school district's homeless liaison, a position that existed specifically to help students in situations like Lily's, but only if they knew about them. The principal was on the phone with Child Protective Services, but not to remove Lily from her parents, to ensure that the family received support services rather than punishment for their circumstances. Angela also made a personal call to her husband, who worked in property management. Within an hour, while Lily sat in the counselor's office being gently talked to about her situation and assured that she wasn't in trouble and neither were her parents, a plan was being formed. Angela's news station agreed to do a story, but a different kind of story, one about how a community comes together to help a family in crisis. They would protect Lily's identity in the broadcast, but use the story to highlight the growing problem of homelessness in their area, particularly among working families who were employed but still couldn't afford housing. By the time school ended that day, Angela Martinez had made a decision that would change the trajectory of her career and the Patterson family's life. She went to the grocery store where Lily's mother, Susan Patterson, worked part-time. Susan was stocking shelves, unaware that her daughter's accidental confession had set off a chain reaction of help and support. When Angela approached her and gently explained what had happened, Susan's first reaction was panic. "Oh God, she's going to be taken away from us. We've tried so hard. We've done everything we can. Please don't take my baby." Angela grabbed Susan's hands. "Nobody is taking Lily away, but we are going to help you. Your daughter accidentally told us about your situation during an interview at school, and within hours, the community has mobilized to help your family." Susan broke down, crying right there in the grocery store aisles, and Angela held her while she sobbed. When Susan could finally speak, she asked the question that had been tormenting her for months. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Angela smiled through her own tears. "Because your daughter is one of the most compassionate, articulate, hopeful children I've ever met, and she got that way because you and your husband are clearly incredible parents. You've kept her safe, educated, clean, and loved despite impossible circumstances. You deserve help, not judgment." That evening, instead of the planned feel-good segment about children's dreams, Angela's news station aired a different story. They showed footage of Lily, face blurred and voice altered to protect her identity, talking about wanting to be a social worker to help struggling families. They talked about how this one child's accidental revelation had exposed a crisis that many people didn't know existed: working families who couldn't afford housing in their own community. The segment included interviews with local housing advocates, statistics about the growing number of homeless families in the area, and information about how viewers could help. Most importantly, the news station announced that they were partnering with local organizations to create an emergency fund to help families exactly like the one Lily had described. The response was overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the fund had received over $50,000 in donations. Local landlords called, offering reduced rent apartments. Employers contacted the station, offering job opportunities. Churches and community centers volunteered space for temporary housing. The factory that had closed and left so many unemployed faced public pressure about their responsibility to the community. And through it all, Angela Martinez personally coordinated getting the Patterson family into stable housing. Her husband's property management company had a vacant 2-bedroom apartment that they offered to the Pattersons at a drastically reduced rate for the first 6 months while the family got back on their feet. But the story was just beginning. When Lily returned to school the next day, she was terrified that her classmates would treat her differently, that they would pity her or make fun of her. Instead, something beautiful happened. Her classmates, guided by the wisdom of Mrs. Chen, had spent the previous afternoon talking about empathy, privilege, and the invisible struggles that people face. The students had decided as a class that they wanted to help not just Lily's family, but other families who might be struggling in silence. They organized a food drive, a clothing swap, and convinced their parents to donate toiletries and supplies to the church shelter that Lily's family had sometimes used. More importantly, Lily's accidental revelation changed the culture at Madison Elementary. The school administration, embarrassed that they had missed the signs of Lily's homelessness, implemented new training for teachers on recognizing and helping students experiencing housing insecurity. They created a discreet pantry where students could access food, hygiene products, and school supplies without having to explain why they needed them. They hired a full-time social worker who focused specifically on connecting struggling families with resources before their situations became critical. And they established a partnership with local businesses and organizations to provide emergency assistance to families in crisis. 3 months after that interview, Angela Martinez did a follow-up story. This time, the Patterson family agreed to go on camera with their faces shown and their real names used because they wanted to help break the stigma around homelessness and poverty. Susan had gotten a full job with benefits at a local medical office thanks to connections made through the news story. Thomas, Lily's father, had been hired at a warehouse that had opened specifically because the community had rallied to attract new businesses to replace the lost factory jobs. The family was living in their apartment. Lily had her own bedroom for the first time in months, and the healing had begun. But more than just their material circumstances had changed. The Patterson family had become advocates for other homeless families. Susan volunteered at the church shelter, helping other mothers navigate the impossible juggling act of work, childcare, and homelessness. Thomas worked with a job training program to help other displaced factory workers learn new skills. And Lily, still determined to become a social worker someday, started a Kids Helping Kids program at her school where students collected supplies and made care packages for children experiencing homelessness. She told her story at school assemblies and community events, always emphasizing the same message: homeless families aren't bad families, they're families who need help and compassion, not judgment. The ripple effects continued to spread. The emergency fund that had started with that one news story grew into a permanent nonprofit organization called Home Starts Here, which provided rapid rehousing assistance to working families who had fallen into homelessness. The organization helped over 200 families in the first year alone, providing not just housing assistance but also job training, childcare support, and financial literacy education to help families achieve long-term stability. They worked on a housing-first model, getting families into safe housing immediately and then providing wraparound services because they recognized that you can't address other issues if you don't first have a safe place to sleep. Angela Martinez, whose career had been focused on traditional journalism, found herself becoming an advocate journalist, using her platform to highlight systemic issues and mobilize community resources. She did a series of investigative reports on affordable housing, living wages, and the gaps in social services that allowed families like the Pattersons to fall through the cracks. Her reporting led to policy changes at the city and county level, including increased funding for homeless prevention programs, rent assistance, and emergency housing. She won several journalism awards, but she always said the most important recognition was the thank you notes from families who had been helped because of stories she'd covered. 1 year after Lily's accidental revelation, Madison Elementary held a special assembly. Lily, now in 6th grade and more confident than ever, stood at the podium in front of the entire school. She was there to present a check for $15,000 that her Kids Helping Kids program had raised through various fundraisers, bake sales, and donation drives. The money would go to Home Starts Here to help more families, but before presenting the check, Lily wanted to say something. A year ago, I accidentally told a reporter something I wasn't supposed to tell anyone. I told her my family was homeless. I was so scared that I'd get my parents in trouble or that people would think less of them. But instead, something amazing happened. People helped us. Not because they felt sorry for us, but because they saw that we needed help and they chose to care. Lily looked out at the audience of students, teachers, and parents. My family isn't homeless anymore. We have an apartment. My parents have jobs. I have my own bed and my own desk for homework. But there are still lots of families in our town who are struggling, who are one missed paycheck away from losing their homes, who are sleeping in their cars or in shelters. And most of them are hiding it, just like my family was hiding it, because they're ashamed or scared. The room was completely silent, everyone hanging on her words. I want to tell those families that you don't have to hide anymore. Asking for help doesn't make you weak, it makes you brave. And I want to tell everyone else, if you see someone struggling, don't look away. Don't pretend you don't notice. Ask if they need help. Be kind. Be generous, because you never know what someone is going through. The assembly erupted in applause. Parents were crying, teachers were crying, and Lily smiled, the same bright smile she'd always had, but now it carried the weight of experience and the light of hope. After the assembly, several parents approached the principal to quietly share that their families were also struggling with housing insecurity, job loss, or food insecurity. The culture of silence had been broken. The shame that had kept people suffering alone was beginning to dissolve. And it all started because one 10-year-old girl accidentally told the truth. 5 years later, Lily Patterson was 15 years old and giving a TED Talk about her experience. She spoke to an audience of thousands about that day in 5th grade when she revealed her family's homelessness without realizing what she was doing. She talked about the fear, the shame, the relief, and ultimately the transformation that came from that accidental honesty. Her talk was titled "The Power of Accidental Truth," and in it, she argued that society's insistence on hiding struggles and maintaining facades of success actually perpetuates the systems that create those struggles. If we were honest about when we need help, she said, and if we responded to that honesty with compassion instead of judgment, we could solve so many problems before they became crises. Lily's TED Talk went viral, viewed millions of times, and translated into dozens of languages. She became a spokesperson for youth homelessness and poverty, traveling to speak at schools' conferences and legislative hearings. She testified before Congress about the need for increased affordable housing and living wage legislation. She partnered with national organizations to replicate the Home Starts Here model in other communities. And through it all, she remained grounded in the lessons she'd learned that day in 5th grade. Everyone has a story you don't know. Everyone is fighting battles you can't see. And kindness costs nothing but changes everything. Angela Martinez, whose impromptu decision to help rather than simply report had set all of this in motion, continued her advocacy journalism. She and Lily developed a friendship that transcended the reporter-subject relationship, becoming true partners in the work of social change. Angela often said that interviewing Lily that day changed her life as much as it changed Lily's, because it reminded her that journalism at its best isn't about getting the story. It's about being human first and using your platform to create positive change. She won a Pulitzer Prize for her series on economic insecurity and housing instability, but she donated the prize money to Home Starts Here. The Patterson family thrived. Susan became a licensed practical nurse, a career she'd always dreamed of but never thought possible until the stability provided by community support gave her the foundation to go back to school. Thomas eventually started his own handyman business, employing other formerly unemployed workers and paying them fair wages with benefits. They bought a small house, the first home they'd owned in years, and they kept a room specifically for hosting families who needed a safe place to stay while they got back on their feet. The Pattersons lived their gratitude every single day, never forgetting what it felt like to sleep in a car, always remembering the kindness that had saved them. And it all started with an accidental revelation, a child's innocent honesty breaking through the shame and silence that had kept suffering hidden. That Wednesday afternoon in 5th grade, when Lily answered a question about her dreams and accidentally revealed her nightmare, the studio went silent. But that silence wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. It was the silence of recognition, the silence of collective realization that homelessness doesn't look like what we imagine, that struggling families are all around us wearing masks of normalcy, that children are bearing burdens they should never have to carry. And from that silence came action, compassion, change, and hope. If Lily's courage and her family's story inspired you, if you believe that we need to break the silence around poverty and homelessness, if you think communities should support struggling families instead of judging them, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story with everyone you know. Talk to your schools about implementing programs to help students experiencing housing insecurity. Donate to organizations that provide rapid rehousing and family support services. Advocate for affordable housing and living wages in your community. And most importantly, if you know a family that's struggling, offer help without judgment. Leave a comment sharing how you've helped someone or how someone helped you during a difficult time. Let's create a world where people don't have to hide their struggles, where asking for help is seen as brave instead of shameful, where communities rally around their neighbors instead of looking away. Lily showed us that accidental truth can be more powerful than carefully maintained facades. Imagine what we could accomplish if we were all brave enough to be honest about when we need help and generous enough to provide it without conditions. Subscribe, share, and act. Because somewhere in your community, there's another Lily, another family sleeping in their car, pretending everything is fine while quietly drowning. Let's be the people who notice, who care, and who help. Together, we can make sure that no child has to keep their family's struggle a secret. Together, we can build communities where everyone has a safe place to call home.